Hey, this is Rustin with Metalholic Magazine, and with me, Kragen Lum of Heathen, Prototype, Psychosis. How many bands you got out there, man?
3.
So I didn't miss any.
No, only one that tours, though, so.
Okay. So, well, we'll talk about the other ones in a minute, but where do you find the time to juggle 3 bands?
I don't know. You know, Prototype doesn't really do much active, like, playing of shows or anything like that. So, I mean, we've been working on a new album, but, you know, I mean, as far as playing shows and being, like, in a more active group, I mean, Heathen's really the one that's the most active.
Right.
And, you know, we rehearse before tours and stuff. You know, I live in Los Angeles and the other guys are up in the Bay Area, so I fly up for rehearsals and I just do my homework and then meet up with them and we go off and do whatever shows we're going to do. You know, and then the other 2 groups, we just get together when we can get together and work on stuff. You know, we find the time somehow, so.
Right now, you generally, when one of the bands out of the Bay Area thrash pool there, when they're looking for somebody to be in the band, they usually tab somebody from there in the Bay Area. I was talking to Chuck Billy not too long ago from Testament, and we were saying it's sort of very incestuous. Everybody's played in everybody's band, so how did they tab you out of L.A. to come up and do this?
It's kind of a cool story, actually. I went up to watch the Thrash of the Titans benefit because I'm a huge Bay Area thrash fan, and I just wanted to see all of those bands, you know, that were reuniting get together and play again. And after the show, I was talking to a guy in the industry and asking him, you know, if he knew of any good singers, because we at the time were looking for a singer for Prototype, and he told me to give Dave White a call. So I got Dave's number and I gave him a call, and he came down and he stayed at my house, and we had him you know, audition for a Prototype, and then he came down a second time and recorded some vocals on a demo that we never released, and that was really it. We just decided at that point that the other guitar player, singer Vince, was going to continue and singing, so he did that, and you know, we just kind of kept in touch with Dave, and they were having a really hard time finding somebody that could play both rhythms and leads, and you know, they said they'd run across many guys that could play leads and many guys that could play rhythms, but they were struggling to find, I guess, just kind of the right combination or the right person. So Dave called me and asked me if I wanted to come up, and I said absolutely, and I learned a couple of the songs from the 2005 demo and then a couple of songs from Victims, and went up and auditioned and got the gig. So kind of a cool little story, you know.
So how does that feel, being a fan, in a sense, now you're actually in the band?
At first, very strange, you know, because it's like, you know, I mean, when I first heard Victims of Deception, I was blown away by all the guitar work and the songwriting and everything. I thought it was an awesome album that was totally underrated. To have Lee say he's the guy, you know, that was a great feeling for me personally. So, you know, now I'm used to playing with the guys now, so I don't want to say it's worn off a little bit, but it's not like that first moment when I went up and sort of auditioned and they asked me if I wanted to join the band. So
he's jaded now, people.
I don't know about that.
Well, and Heathen, this is one of the things I was going to talk to you about anyway. I mean, Heathen emerged at the same time as other Bay Area thrashers like Testament and Exodus. As a matter of fact, Lee's in Exodus now.
Yep.
Never quite reached the same level they did at the time, yet they're universally regarded as being just as good and influential as those bands. As a current member of the band, but also as an outsider who was a fan, why do you think they don't get that recognition and never quite blew up?
I think there's 2 reasons. The first is there were sort of, from hearing them talk about the sort of business side of things during those first 2 albums and tours, they just really had sort of a bad string of luck, because they were on Combat, which seemed perfect. They had a video on MTV, and then suddenly they were without a label, and it was 4 years or whatever in between albums. And I think at the time, it's like when you go away for that long, it's hard. It was harder, you know, when every other band in the genre was pumping out an album every year or year and a half or whatever it was, and continuing to tour and all that. easier to kind of grind the name into people's heads, whereas, you know, sort of that long span, and then unfortunately afterwards, you know, they were inactive for a really long period of time. I think that was one of the major reasons, and I think the other one, which is kind of evident because we never play the song live, is the biggest song they had was a cover, and it wasn't really indicative of what they played in their originals. You know,
right.
So Set Me Free was a great song, and it was a killer cover. I loved it, but it wasn't indicative of what their other music was like. You know, it wasn't thrash. So, you know, I know that they said when they were touring for the first album, they had a bunch of people that would come out and they would hear Set Me Free and go nuts, and then during the other songs they'd be quiet because they, you know, they hadn't heard it or they weren't expecting that, you know.
Right.
So I don't know. Who knows? You know, the whole thing is a mystery sometimes of why one band gets more highly regarded than another or anything. You know.
That's true. I mean, from the Bay Area as well, Y&T, great hard rock band.
Yeah.
Phenomenal, but they just never blew up for some reason. But
yeah, absolutely, and they're, you know, very influential and, you know, all of that too. So.
Well, then that brings us back around. Early last year, like January of last year, Heathen dropped their third studio album, but the first in nearly 2 decades. It's amazing to sort of have a band that long and only put out 3 records. But The Evolution of Chaos was the new album. What was it like for you to be a part of that rebirth, so to speak?
Oh, it was great. Because, you know, like I said, you know, I think the fact that Lee was comfortable having me not only play but write songs for the album, you know, I mean, that was great for me. I'm a huge fan, so I tried to write stuff that was Heathen-like, you know.
Right.
I understand how the songs are structured and understand the riffs and all of that, and so for me personally, it was killer. I really enjoyed it. I love, you know, playing the songs that we wrote for the new album, and the recording process was interesting for me because at the time I was working a full-time like corporate day job and flying up on the weekends to record every weekend. So, you know, it was interesting to see how things would change during the week when the other guys would come in and work during the week, and then I'd come up in the weekend and get to hear the, you know, sort of the results every week. But no, it was awesome, and you know, it was great. We went to Japan right before the album was released there. It was actually released there in like December of 2010.
9.
Or 9, yes, you're right, 9. And then it came out, you know, 3 months later or whatever in the U.S. and Europe. So, no, it was awesome.
Well, and this may be in part due to the legendariness of the band, if you will, or the respect that they're accorded from back in the day. But the response to the album, both from fans, the metal community, and critics alike, was excellent. Everybody loved the album. Were you guys surprised by the response?
I don't know if surprised is the right word. We were really happy with the response. You know, I think in a way, I think we realized that we made a great record. We knew it, and it was just a matter of getting it out to people. You know, the fact that we got so many positive reviews was awesome. You know, we couldn't have asked for more, I guess.
And I mean, in a sense, you guys, you know, Heathen Part 2, if you will, is actually, with all the stuff that's going on in thrash right now, that resurgence, if you will, or reemergence, this may actually be the time where Heathen takes that next step they should have taken so long ago. Are you guys sort of feeling that?
I mean, I really hope so. I think that's all what we want, you know, is what we want to do. It seems like, you know, the resurgence of thrash is moving on to sort of its next stage. There was the first phase where all the sort of young kids came out and in their bands, and a lot of those bands, you know, are good, but also very derivative. They weren't very original. They didn't have their own real style or anything. There were a few that stood out, and, you know, so it's almost like they're kind of weeding themselves out. And then the bigger bands, I guess, or some of the other bands that were in the scene that have reemerged, like Heathen, you know, are sort of seeing a bump because, you know, that original style and everything is still there, and we were, you know, able to make a quality album, and I think people saw that.